Hi folks, this is Klaus at Top Hydraulics. We'll show you today how to swap all the convertible top cylinders in a Mercedes R129 SL class, such as this 97 here. The SL class is an awesome car. At Top Hydraulics we deal with a lot of convertible top systems, and the R129 is still one of my all-time favorites because it is so solidly well made, and this car deserves to be the modern classic that it already is. Anyway, the video will be having a bunch of chapters so that you can fast forward from one component to the next one. However, anybody who is new to the R129, if you just bought one and you found leaks, it is actually the best move to remove and replace all 11 or 12 cylinders in the car, and depending on the age of the car and the climate, most likely you should do the front distributor between the two front locks as well. Reason is these cylinders all have built-in obsolescence, which means the manufacturer originally put in seals that they knew would fail after 10 to 15 years. How fast they fail depends a lot on the age of the cylinders and the climate they've been in, or if somebody thought they were extra smart and added stop leak additives to the fluid. That actually makes all the seals in the car fall apart a lot faster. It may be temporary relief, but it doesn't work for long. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about. I will get into more details about the differences from one model year to another while we're at it. For now, we'll start with the top and we'll work our way to the back and show you how to replace all of these cylinders. So here we have laid out the hydraulic system for a Mercedes R129 SL class. To the left on your screen, the hydraulic cylinders and the front distributors. Some of the cylinders mounted in the locks or latches already, and to the right or towards the rear of the car we have the valve blocks, pump, and some of them have a roll bar valve block, and the roll bar support cylinders, and just for kicks also the soft top controller, which is actually mounted below the valve blocks under one of the storage compartments. So the way the system works is the pump in the trunk under the spare tire provides highly pressurized fluid to the valve blocks. The valve blocks get signals from the controller as to which valve to open, and thus make the various cylinders move and move the top or latch it or unlatch it, whatever is needed at the time. And the valve blocks, depending on model year, the right valve block will also steer the roll bar cylinder, or there's a separate roll bar valve block in early model years. Now, what can go wrong in this hydraulic system? Obviously, the most important problem is you're going to find leaks. Actually, these cars, sad to say, do have built-in obsolescence. The seals used in these systems were not the best ones available, and they will typically fail once a car has reached age 10 to 15. If you're very lucky and you live in a very moderate climate and your car has been garaged, hasn't gone through lots of temperature cycles, then you might get as many as 20 years life out of some of these seals in these cylinders. If you're in a hot climate such as Florida or Texas, or you live near the equator, your cylinders will fail a lot sooner. The deal is that all the seals in these cylinders will decay with time. It's a chemical reaction, and as you know from chemistry, chemical reactions are sped up typically by heat. So that's why I keep talking about hot climates making these cylinders decay faster, the seals in the cylinders. Also, the wrong fluid in the system will make the seals fail faster, and water will have a devastating effect on the whole system because it causes corrosion. Water can also infiltrate the original polyurethane seals in these cylinders and make them swell like crazy. There's also some quote-unquote rebuilders out there that use polyurethane. Unfortunately, polyurethane hydrolyzes. It is extremely sensitive to water. It is also sensitive to other additives or acetone or the likes, whereas top hydraulic seals are inert to almost any fluid out there. Just don't use brake fluid. So what seals are there in these cylinders that will fail? Well, let's take a look at the simplest one of them all, that is the front lock cylinder. The piston seals are very important because if you have an internal bypass in a piston seal, it will rob power from your whole system. It's not only that this cylinder won't work right, there are several cylinders in the whole system that get pressurized anytime the pump moves, and if there's an internal bypass in one of those cylinders, an internal bypass meaning fluid gets past the piston seal, it has decayed or broken, then your top moves slowly and it will be very hard to diagnose what's actually going wrong here. So on the front lock cylinder alone, there are many different versions of piston seals used over the years, and you will not be able to find those piston seals online anywhere. You also will not be able to find the port seals. There are some, I would call them artists, who sell seal kits or even premium seal kits, and all those kits are as a band-aid. There is no such thing as do-it-yourself rebuild of cylinders. You can only patch them, and unfortunately we have seen thousands and thousands of cylinders coming in that people have tried to rebuild themselves, at least tried to open up, and they damage metal parts, and suddenly the whole thing becomes a whole lot more expensive. You didn't only waste your money on the seal kit, but you also need to replace metal parts in these cylinders, and that of course is more expensive. Every R129 cylinder has the part number on it. It's in the mold of the cylinder. Here's a 124-800-0272, which is the right bow extension cylinder, and it also has the manufacturing year and week on it. So 93W40 means the cylinder was made in the 40th week of 1993, so it would have come out of a model year in 1994. You will also see numbers where the hoses go in at the ports. There's a 94 and an 85 here. 85 means hose number 85 goes into the cylinder. As a general rule with R129 cylinders, the odd number is always closer to the shaft and the even number is always closer to the bottom. You will find on the hydraulic hose the matching number printed about a ½ inch away from the ferrule, meaning from the end of the steel fitting. Here you'll see the 85, usually in red ink. Lastly, how are these hoses fastened? Well, there are the hydraulic line clips. We've already loosened this clip here, and we can put it back in. How do you remove the clip? The easiest way is take a small screwdriver, hook it under the loop on the cylinder, and pull it out. Once the clip is removed, you can simply pull the hose out. This one was a little harder to pull out because it had a fresh tight seal from Top Hydraulics in it. Anyway, you will see the bulge on this hydraulic line fitting. This bulge, when you install the hose again, is supposed to go all the way down, and the top of the bulge is flush with the cylinder. Now you put the hydraulic line clip back in with a wider or barbed side into the rail. Slide it in until it clips into place, and there you have a safe connection again. These clips absolutely can be reused. Most Mercedes dealers don't want to go through the trouble of selling you new clips, but they actually are available. Or if you should lose a clip, do let us know. We give out some complimentary clips with orders that we ship, or if you need more clips, we can sell them to you. So here we have the 4 most commonly used pumps in the R129 SL class, starting with early model years, moving on to later ones. Early model years, early 90s, have the 129-800-0048 or 129-800-0548 pump. The main difference between these two really being only the location of the return fluid and filter. And you'll notice that the early versions have a solenoid each, and they have 2 high pressure outputs going to different solenoid blocks, whereas as we go to the mid-90s model 129-800-0748, it has only 1 high pressure output, and the return fluid goes back into the reservoir. Starting with model year 97, we have the part number 129-800-1448. This one has 1 high pressure output, and it actually has a steel line for the return fluid going back into the pump body as opposed to going back into the reservoir. There's just a vent cap on top of the reservoir here. So what can go wrong with these pumps? It's a lot. These pumps actually are excellent pumps, but like anything, they can fail. The pumps all are gear pumps. Gear pumps are high performance pumps. They put out good flow and pressure, are very reliable, but they are very sensitive to contamination. There's a good filtering system in here, but if over time your seals decay in your cylinders and parts of the seals get suspended in the fluid, ultimately that will turn into sludge depositing on the bottom of the reservoir and slowly working its way into the gears of the pump, and that way we see lots of pumps failing with simply the gears wearing out where the pump cannot make enough pressure anymore. You will also notice the solenoids on the early model years. They can get plugged or damaged. Obviously electric motors can go bad, or on any one of these the oil seal that seals the electric motor from the pump body itself can and will go bad at some point. And also you will see that the later models have 4 wires going into the motor. One of them is a temperature sensor, and that sensor was introduced for good reason, as these motors can overheat, and these sensors actually are supposed to prevent the motor overheating, but it doesn't always quite work that way. Okay, let's talk about the solenoid valve blocks for a moment. Every R129 has 2 or 3 of them, with only the early model years having 3 of them. These here are from a later model year, and you see what's on these valves. Well, there are of course the retaining rings that click into place, either open or close. If you move them a little bit, you can lock the hoses in place. If you click them open again, you can pull the hoses out. There are numbers stamped on each port that match the hose numbers. And of course we have the solenoid valves on here. The solenoid valves are 3-way valves that are a little more complicated than one might think. They can direct the flow, the high pressure that is supplied to the valve block, to the various cylinders, but at the same time they can also block or release the return flow from other cylinders. And lastly, there can be pressure relief valves in these valve blocks, and we are seeing more and more failures of the port seals where the hoses go in, as well as the seals around the solenoids. Each solenoid has several seals sealing off the different chambers. What is bad when these valves fail is if they have an internal bypass that can totally slow down or rob all the power from your convertible top. It can be fairly difficult to diagnose where the failure is, but we can help you through it if you should ever run into that problem. Okay, so why should you go with Top Hydraulics to rebuild your parts? Well, you probably wonder about 3 points the most. 1 is reliability, 2 is service, and 3 is value. Let's start with the value. I think it's undisputable that when we charge about a tenth of what you would be paying the dealer, that's a good deal, in particular when the parts that we send to you are truly better than brand new ones. They may not look as pretty, but they will last a lot longer. Most of our rebuilds should last between 30 and 50 years compared to the 10 to 15 years that you originally get from new parts. More so, if you have used fluid in your system and there are any adverse conditions, our parts will actually outlast the new parts even more because our seals are much more inert to external influences like contamination and heat. So what else is there? We covered the value, reliability. Our parts should last 30 to 50 years. We are the only ones who truly upgrade and replace all seals in these cylinders, and it is necessary. I've had thousands of DIY attempt cylinders going through my hands where people try to fix them, and well, just doing one seal doesn't do the trick, or people simply damage their cylinders doing it themselves. Turns my stomach each time, but well, you get what you pay for. Lastly, service. We have a service department answering calls as quickly as we can, and if you run into serious problems with your convertible top and you're a customer of ours, I will try very hard to help you solve the problem and troubleshoot. I do know these systems very well. So let's get into it.